Presentation number 2. So basically, my project is called EatCard, which is kind of an impassioned project for me, a while in the making. So just a little bit of background. So my original idea when I came up with this concept was that it would be a payment program that would work in our school cafeteria, so students could use a QR code to pay for all of their meals, thus eliminating lines and the need for paper receipts. So I've been kind of developing a shell of an application on the side, but I haven't really done any functionality. So for the purpose of this class, I was like, what functionality should be included in this app to use in the cafeteria? So my first hypothesis was, will a payment method increase checkout speed at the cafeteria? And to test this really quickly, I just went with my phone in the cafeteria and just timed each of the students entering through the line and checking out. So what I quickly realized is that the average time that a student goes through checkout process isn't really affected by the checkout process itself, but rather the actual physical size of the cafeteria and student ratio to that capacity. So there's nothing really that an app would help facilitate in terms of making the payment process faster. So this kind of first hypothesis ended up being a void. So then, this is pretty early on in the class. So then I came up with a new idea and a new set of hypotheses, which was, would nutritional information or a rating system be more useful to students in the cafeteria? So what I mean by nutritional information is that our cafeteria doesn't really provide all of the calories and ingredients directly on the food that is presented to us. It's kind of hidden and there has their own set of symbols. So what if we standardized it and just used the regular nutrition label in an app that would give the information? Or the second functionality that I was testing is, would people want to rate the food so this way they would have some say in terms of the food that was being served? And what kind of students thought about having one of these functionalities be used in our cafeteria? So as far as the implementation goes, so my goal for the 2 experiments was to have 20 students for each, be set at a non-peak hour in the cafeteria. Our cafeteria gets really hectic during the long hours. In between, lunch, and then there's kind of a dead space, and then dinner, the dinner rush hour. So definitely during an off-peak time, so this way students would be more willing to participate. Have 2 independent groups and a control group. So I considered the control group someone that took the nutritional test without the information provided by the app, and then the 2 independent groups. So people that took the food rating functionality test would not take the the nutritional information test. And then secondly, the simulation use the testing sheets to represent the functionality of the app. So obviously I don't have these 2 apps built fully out, but for the purposes of this class, I used sheets that would kind of act as the information that would be provided by this app, just to get the feedback on what exactly the functionality students want from a cafeteria app. And then implement. So here's just some quick photos of how I designed the experiment. So originally, actually, I had students for the food rating system. They would go into the cafeteria and purchase the food, come back and take my quick little test sheet survey. However, I realized that as I was doing the test that a lot of people were wanting to do the nutritional information test because they didn't want to go in and purchase the food that they didn't want. So I went in and I bought the food myself and put them in little sample cups. And then this then attracted students because of free food. So then it kind of got a lot more participants than I was wanting. So I got about 51 students to participate, 27 in one group and 23 and 24 in the other group, which was really helpful because then I got hence more feedback. And then basically, like the student shows, they would take the information, they would rate the food, give their feedback, and all this information was then processed anonymously, and just to see what their thoughts were. General comments that I got were that from people that had allergies, they were like, wow, this is a really great use because the ingredients are clearly listed. They're not really clearly listed now in the cafeteria. And then for a second part of the implementation was obviously the app build out. So I did a lot of in-depth research into what it would take to get sort of this application developed and built to be implemented into a university. So this is just kind of a quick time chart of some information that I did as far as the specific team members that I would need. I have a previous experience developing applications, but I'm usually kind of brought on for one phase of the project. So this was kind of another learning for me as far as if I were to actually implement this, what type of man hours and team members that I would need. And then I also developed, this is just sort of like a brief timeline and goal set if I were to actually implement this, which is important. And as far as the experimentation goes, it would be like what functionality would I build out through this process. Developing the design, beta testing it, implementing it into Pace University, setting up the servers, and then An interesting part of implementation that I found is that Chartwell's, who runs our current cafeteria, has about 120 universities in their Eastern Division. So one of the ways to actually implement this into the market would be to partner with Chartwell's, because then they would give me access to the 120 universities. And then I think a reasonable goal would be, after a successful implementation at PACE, to implement at 5 universities after partnering with Chartwell's. And then to go back to the validation. So why is this app important? Why would students use it? So about a vast majority of students, 45%, come to the cafeteria 3 times a day. So this is potentially 3 times that they could use the application. So it's a daily usage type of application. And then another surprising number is that 22% go to the cafeteria over 5 times a day. So I was not expecting that large of a percentage of my test pool to be coming to the cafeteria quite frequently. And then the rest was kind of split between 0, which are like commuter students that just happened to be there. It's finals week, so when I did this test, it was right before Thanksgiving, which is right before exams, so that's probably why I got some commuter students, just happened to be at the cafeteria. And then just here's some percentage feedback, and just from the verbal feedback as well. So I asked people just flat out, are you satisfied with the cafeteria currently? 70% said that they were not. And then the follow-up question to that is, do you want to say in what type of food is served at the cafeteria? And 100% of students, including the 30% that was satisfied with the quality of the cafeteria, said yes, they want to say in the type of food that the cafeteria is serving. So this is good because that means that there needs to be some type of mechanism to get the opinions of the students to the management of the cafeteria, which is why the food rating system functionality would be important. And then 95% of the people got the nutritional questions that I asked correct with the app information from the implementation, and whereas only 45% got it correct with just the Chartwell's information, which is currently in use. So that kind of validated the need for a sort of nutritional side of information functionality. However, when asked if they would be willing to download the app, only 55% said that they would if it was a free download, and 23% said if it was like a charge for it. So this kind of validates if I were to actually implement this, that the school would have to be the one to pay that upfront cost, because otherwise the significance of students wanting to download the app decreases by about half. And then so further validation, based on the 2 functionalities and overall, here's an interesting piece of information that I think is the most useful validation out of this entire implementation process, is that restricted versus non-restricted diet. So back to the people that have some type of food allergy or dietary restriction. So only about 10% of the people that were in this study of 51 students had a dietary restriction or allergy of some sort. But 100% of them check nutritional information every meal, every time they go to the cafeteria, everything that they're getting from the cafeteria. So of this small 10%, they would probably most likely be the ones to be my hardcore users for this application in the nutritional functionality portion, so not the food rating system. So based on this information, I would go ahead and implement the nutritional information functionality, because I know that the small population of students that would download the app would be actually using it 100% of the time for a vast majority of the meals that they would get from the cafeteria. So those are my conclusion thoughts, and thank you for listening.
Thank you.